Hiya, I'm Caroline Mitchell, canine behaviourist at Good Doggy. If you've ever been on the internet to look for advice on how to help your dog with a particular problem, then you will have come across tons and tons of advice. I'm going to talk about one problem, mouthing, which is a problem that lots and lots of dogs have, and 3 different ways to solve it. Now, mouthing is usually, if you go on the internet, you'll find that the main piece of advice for mouthing is usually to ignore it and provide more enrichment. So I'm going to go through 3 different case studies, and I'm going to talk about the differences between them all and whether that advice, that normal advice you get off the internet, would have worked for any of them or each of them. So I'm going to talk to you about Teddy, Lola and Codi, and it's Teddy's up first. So Teddy is a 4-month-old small mixed breed puppy. Obviously he's very, very young. He tends to mouth when he gets overexcited, and he'll mouth anybody, not just his family. It will be visitors, people he meets in the park, other dogs, absolutely everybody. There's no discrimination. He's happy to mouth anybody, but mostly when he gets overexcited. He likes to grab hair and sleeves and scrunchies as well. He'll go for your arms, your hands, your coat. So he's pretty happy just to grab or mouth at anyone and anything that you're kind of wearing that seems to be standing out to him. He's worse in the morning, and he's worse at other times that are exciting too. So for example, when he's getting his lead on, during playtime. So any of those kind of high and exciting parts of his day, that's when his mouthing gets worse. So it's pretty obvious that overexcitement is a big part of this problem. Now, because he's young, his family felt that he would probably just grow out of this, that somehow this would be connected to teething. But we can see that this is based mainly around overexcitement, and dogs can get overexcitement at any time of their lives. So that's the underlying cause, the overexcitement. So that's something we need to look at. We know that he also likes to play very rough. He likes to wrestle, and as a part of that, he likes to bite and grab as well. So we've identified that he also needs to get some doggy friends. Humans are rubbish to play with, especially when it comes to wrestling, because we are not really designed to be able to take that kind of rough and tumble play. So we've established here that its underlying cause is really excitement, but also his need, the socialization need, is not being met either. And I talk about needs quite a lot. Check out the other videos if you want to know more about that. But basically, all animals and humans and dogs, we all have a certain set of needs. They all feature in a certain order. So the ones at the bottom are very important. Those are primal needs, food and stuff like that. And the needs de-escalate the further away you get from there. So there's much less important needs kind of nearer the top. But basically the needs are what we need to stay mentally and physically well and healthy and safe. So that's important to just establish the need as well as the underlying cause of the problem, because you'll need to address both of those when we come to help Teddy and all the dogs. You need to figure out both of those. Check out that video on needs there. I go into a lot more detail and explain it properly and things like that. So with Teddy, how do we fix this? So we know it's overexcitement and we know he needs socialized. So those are really the 2 things we're going to focus on the most with Teddy. So socialization, that's fine. He's getting older now. He can start going out for walks. We're going to teach him some recall. We're going to find him some friends. We're going to get some groups that he can go for walks on. Getting him to have a very good recall will mean that he will be able to get more freedom in the park, which is going to be really important for him in terms of finding suitable friends for him. So once his socialization and his recall are up to scratch, he will not only be able to be recalled if he's off his lead. So if he is interacting with a dog that doesn't seem to be a good choice for him, you can recall him. But more importantly, with that calm socialization will also mean that he will be much better at identifying the dogs that are right for him. Going on group walks will help with that, because he will be on a walk with lots of different dogs with lots of different personality types, and the more he can go on walks like this, the more he can learn to identify which dog is going to be his soulmate. So he won't be bothering those quiet little dogs that just want to have a nice little sniff around and are not interested in socializing. He will learn how to find the dog that wants to rough play and wrestle with him. So that's really important that he learns how to do that himself, so that he's not just randomly running up to any dog on the park and annoying everybody, that he's actually learning how to identify the right dogs to socialize and play with. But you have that recall as a backup as well. So a big part of his training includes the recall and socialization, but also we're working on excitement as well, because we know that when Teddy gets overexcited, that's when his brain gets switched off. He goes over threshold. I talk about threshold quite a lot. The threshold is the line underneath the threshold line. Your dog is usually calm, their brain is switched on and they're paying attention. Once they go over threshold, that is once that emotion, the excitement, anxiety, whatever it is, has got overwhelming, they've gone across the threshold line, and now all of that sort of thought process, they're not paying attention, etc., all of that has now switched off. So at that point then, it's very difficult to get normal sensible behaviors from your dog, and that's really what's happening to Teddy, is he's crossing that threshold line too often, and when he is, that's when he's using mouthing and grabbing and biting as a release of that energy. He's not thinking about his training, he's just reacting in a situation, so he's just too overexcited. So we need to try and keep him calm. So we want to identify lots of different areas. We talked about play, getting his lead on, the morning, things like that. So we're going to start working on breaking those down into smaller steps. So for the lead, maybe you go and pick the lead up, and that starts the excitement building, and then you go sit down, and that little break will give your dog a chance to calm again. So they start to creep up this excitement scale. They're getting close to threshold, but because you've stopped, you've paused, then the excitement has diminished again. And then you go to the next step. Maybe you reach forward and try to put the lead on your dog's collar, and that gets him excited and he starts to act, so you can just remove it. And you're just going to keep going one tiny little baby step at a time through whatever part of it that of your day that your dog finds exciting. Baby steps with lots of breaks, because that just gives them a chance between each new step for that excitement to subside, and it keeps them well under that threshold line and means they don't go above the point where they start to do all that mouthing and things like that. With play, you could be playing with your dog. You get very, very good at noticing when that excitement is starting to build up, and that's when you stop, take a little tiny break, let your dog calm down, be as boring as you can, and then you start again with the play. And doing a lot of that will help him learn as well how to control his own excitement, which also again is really important. It's not just about trying to control our dogs and stop them from doing things. It's about teaching them how to control themselves so they make good decisions for us. With Teddy, we also are going to cut back on the amount of enrichment toys that he has. He had quite a lot. There were toys chasing puzzle balls and Kongs and all different things, and the ones that he had were quite exciting too. So we changed them and introduced some calm enrichment toys for him. So a calmer thing might be a lick mat, or something he can just sit down and just chew slowly and calmly for kind of a longer period of time, something a bit more long lasting, but nothing that he had to chase or throw or punch or anything like that. Those ones are too exciting for poor Teddy. We also looked at his greeting behaviors, because that's another very exciting time, and something that his family were doing was they were greeting him in quite an exciting way. And this wasn't helping him, because he was already very excited when people would come home or in the morning, and that kind of extra high-pitched tone, very exciting, "Woo, Teddy, I'm home," kind of voice, that kind of behaviour was just tipping him over the edge, and that was causing him to become very excited. So loads and loads of different ways that we helped Teddy. We got him socialising, we worked on his calming his behaviour, calming his overexcitement. And that worked a retreat for Teddy, and his mouthing was then able to subside to a point where it eventually just disappeared. So it wasn't too much needing to be done there, just being really very boring and getting him socialized so he had an outlet for that kind of rough behavior. So let's move on to Lola. Lola is a 9-month-old cockapoo. So Lola was very frustrated by an inconsistent approach in the family. Lots of different people in the family all having different ideas and approaches. The inconsistencies arose in lots of different ways. One important one was her extendable lead. Sometimes she was allowed to range out, sometimes she wasn't. Some people brought her on a different kind of lead. Some people were training her in different ways to others. People had different boundaries, so it's very difficult for her to know exactly what was expected of her at different times, and that creates this frustration that builds up. Lola was particularly susceptible to frustration. Her personality just meant that she was more likely to become frustrated than maybe another dog. So she also gets very frustrated when she's behind stair gates, crates, and she would bite and shake her bars and things like that if she was trapped behind a gate or if she was inside her crate. Lola mostly focuses her mouthing on the adult female. There didn't seem to be a huge link to that, other than the fact that that particular member of the family was at home more of the time and she did lots of stuff for Lola. So it was really perhaps more of the fact that she was available and there more of the time. She didn't work full time. She would walk her, she fed her, she did most of sort of the important training. If she needed to go to the groomers, it would be her that would take her and organise that and things like that. So there maybe wasn't a huge connection there, but she often did take her mouthing out on that person. Also discovered about Lola, she had some joint pain in her hips. So that was important that we address that. So we've got her need, which is health and pain. Also safety, because when a dog gets frustrated from inconsistent kind of training methods, then and inconsistent routines, then that provides a sense of being out of control. And just like us, when we don't feel we have control of our lives, when we don't get to make choices, and when our expectations are not met all the time, this threatens our safety need. This is what makes us feel unsafe, and then we start to try and get control of things. So for Lola, this is how she expressed that through her mouthing. The goal of her behaviour was to release that pressure. So those are the focuses that we're going to be looking at with Lola. And we're going to look at, in particular, that consistency of training. So how do we help her? With Lola, because it's a frustration-based problem, there isn't usually a specific trigger. Frustration builds up through the day, so frustration can come throughout the day, and by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if that dog has not had a proper nap to kind of relieve some of that, then the frustration will then just spill out. It doesn't have to be in the afternoon, it could be any time of the day. Lola's also a teenager, which adds to that as well. So she has a much lower tolerance for frustrators than another dog, not just because of her personality, but that age has taken its toll as well. So there's no specific trigger for us to work on. So we need to work on the underlying problem and the goal of the behaviour and the need. So we need to fix all of that so that the problem can just solve itself. So we removed common frustrators for Lola. A crate is a common one for lots of dogs. They get frustrated when they're trapped behind a crate and a stair gate, so we got rid of that. We also removed her slow feeder. Slow feeders can cause frustration when you're trying to eat your meal. You don't want to be hindered, you don't want to be you don't want to solve puzzles to get your food, you just want to enjoy your meal. And dogs are the same, they need to just eat unhindered. So puzzle feeders and slow feeders and that kind of stuff are not a good time for tea time, are not good for tea time. those things are much better kept as just little enrichment toys that can be had for snack time and other times. But when you're eating your meal with Lola, we took that away so she could eat more freely. She was a fast eater, so we spread her food out into a couple of bowls so that she couldn't gulp down too much at the same time. But apart from that, she was mostly unhindered. When you try to eat out of a slow feeder, when she put her mouth in, she was banging her teeth against the parts of the bowl that were protruding up between the food, and that's, for lots of dogs, that causes a lot of frustration. But often, because frustration builds up, you don't notice that. So that could be the first thing that happens to her in the morning. She goes out to the toilet, then she gets her slow feeder bowl, and the frustration now has started to build. The extendable lead we got rid of because they cause frustration too. And actually they're not great for dogs anyway. If you're trying to teach your dog not to pull on the lead, an extendable lead is a definite no-no, because they have to pull against the lead. They have to feel that tension and pull against it to make the lead get longer. So actually, when you're using an extendable lead, you're teaching your dog to pull on the lead, and that's just reinforcing that that's a good way to get extra freedom. For Lola, though, it was an inconsistent approach. Sometimes she wanted to range out further, but she couldn't because the lead was locked or the person had their finger on the button. And at other times, she had more freedom. There was no consistency as to how much lead she could have, how much freedom she had. And a different member of the family didn't like the extendable lead, and they were using a short one. So between everybody, there was a lot of inconsistency there. We also got rid of a few of the puzzle toys that she found quite frustrating. And we swapped them out for finding the treat type games and recall games. So finding the treat is just about hiding treats and letting her sniff, use her nose to search for them, to find them, and to, once she found them, to easily get them. So it was a very easy game for her to win, but it could be still just as enriching as any of the other toys that she had before. And recall games, again, very low frustration. It's actually quite nice for her. She got to run and she got a bit of freedom, and she got constantly rewarded for it. So that was another low frustrating game that she could play that was quite enriching. We also needed that recall for her because the lead did create some frustration. So being able to walk her to the park and then give her time to get off of her lead meant that for the off-lead part, at least, she was able to exercise without additional frustrations. And that helped tick that box about making choices, because when she's off her lead, she was able to sniff things that she wanted to sniff. Her recall was good, so there was no worries about her getting lost or wandering off. But she was able to sniff the things that she wanted to sniff, follow trails as she chose. She could walk on the left or on the right. There was nobody controlling that for her. Some dogs do really well being kind of managed that way, but dogs that suffer with frustration, these are just additional things, and it just removes choices. Just like us, dogs need to feel like they're making choices. Sometimes simple little things like that can make huge amounts of difference. So the recall for her, swapping some of those frustrating things that she had around the house, stopped this frustration building up. So therefore she didn't need to release that tension anymore. So the tension release element of it solved itself. Her goal was to release pressure, and because the pressure never built up, then the goal just disappeared. Now, the health need was an interesting one because actually getting rid of the crate really, really helped her. She didn't feel she couldn't stretch and relax properly in her crate like she might have preferred to. She was a big, stretchy out dog, and because of the confines of the crate, actually that really helped getting rid of the crate in terms of that kind of hip pain. But she also got help from the vet for that. So there was a 3 kind of prong attack there to help her get past her mouthing. And you'll notice that for Lola, we didn't add enrichment toys. We didn't try to solve a boredom problem. We didn't try to ignore her at all. Ignoring her actually would have made it much, much worse for her, as would those enrichment toys that, if they were the wrong kind, would have provided more frustration and not relieved it. So that piece of advice would not have worked for Lola. And finally, we have Codi. So Codi is a 2-year-old collie. Codi's problem is that he is overtired and overstimulated. So Codi's mouthing gets worse through the day. Codi doesn't sleep very much. He's a very, very busy dog. He's constantly looking for enrichment. He's constantly looking for mischief. And because of this, his family have added more and more toys. They've added more and more walks. They're trying to break his boredom, keep him entertained, drain that energy out. But for him, that has actually really only just made things worse. He's overtired, so he needs to settle. He needs to be able to rest. And his mouthing can escalate quite quickly. Sometimes it appears to be attention. It doesn't seem to have very clear triggers. And anybody, again, can be mouthed. Cody doesn't mind who's there in front of him. When he needs to let this tension out, then it could be a stranger, it could be his family, it could be anybody, it could be another dog. So for Cody, his needs that have been unfulfilled here, if you like, are sleep and exercise. And his goal, just like Lola, is to relieve that tension. So as that frustration, as that tension builds up during the day, that lack of sleep, that kind of anger will start to creep in. He'll get very grumpy. That's how that's coming out. And his mouthing can be quite dangerous. It's quite worrying. He will mouth very, very hard, and he actually doesn't discriminate which bit of a person he's mouthing at. So he's lunged at faces and ears, as well as hands and feet and anything that he can kind of get close to. So his goals are to relieve tension, and his need that has been broken is the sleep need and exercise. So those two are right on the very bottom of the pyramid. They are very primal, important needs. You can't survive without sleep and exercise. So not meeting those needs has much higher consequences, and that's why this problem has escalated quite fast. So how do we help Cody? So Cody just needs rest. That's really what he needs. He just needs sleep. Most dogs need between 16 and 18 hours of rest a day. He's not getting anywhere near that. You know, he'll sleep at night and that's about it. So we created a crate for him and put that up in a separate room so that he could have naps at set times of the day. We removed toys and other stimulators. He had lots of chewy things down. He constantly had access to other kinds of toys, balls and things like that. So we removed a lot of that, and we bring those things out now at just set times. So we don't want to spoil his fun completely. We're not trying to ruin that. We still want him to get the benefits of toys and ball chasing and stuff like that, but we want to control it now. We want to give him time that his brain can settle and rest. And while all of this stuff is still about, then he just can't do that, because all he's doing is thinking about playing with his toy or grabbing this or getting some attention or whatever. So removing all of that will really help him, and creating set times for that kind of stuff. We swapped some of his toys for calming things. I talked about lick mats. We gave one to Lola, and chewy bones as well. Again, we've removed his slow feeder, because another thing about the slow feeder is slow feeders can trigger adrenaline, because it's not restful trying to eat your food when you're trying to get the food, but you're technically still fighting with your bowl to get the food. Then when you're in that mood, then it's adrenaline that's driving that. So we don't want him to have adrenaline constantly surging around when he's trying to eat his meals. That should be a relaxing activity. It's a part of the rest and digest part of the day. So we want to switch that adrenaline off. We want him to feel like he's had a proper meal, that he did his hunting game first. So find the treat is a good one, going for a walk, chasing the ball, and then you turn that off when you go into rest and digest. You eat the food, then you go into relaxation mode. And while that adrenaline is still going, when you're trying to eat the food, then it prevents that from going into the next stage. So he's not getting into his rest and digest mode because of that adrenaline that's been triggered by eating the food. So that's a really important part of his training plan as well. So we reduced his walks too, because he was just getting so much exercise, and that's for some dogs very, very important. You know, lots of dogs is good for helping them to calm down, to use up excess energy. Remember, walks are only to remove excess energy, not all energy. But once that energy has been taken away and the dog has had a good exercise, if they're coming home and they're having a good nap, then the amount of exercise you're doing is fine. But if they're coming home and they're just as wired up as they were at the start, and they're looking for stuff, they're looking for mischief, they're mouthing, all this kind of stuff, then it might be something worth looking at. This is what worked for Codi. So Codi had his reduced walks, we calmed down the house environment, we set up the crate in a place where he could get regular naps, and all of this meant that his needs were met. So when we talk about needs being met, we think about not being fulfilled in full. So for example, if a dog's sleep need is not getting met, we immediately think that they're not getting enough. The same with our exercise. When we think of the exercise need not being met, it's because they didn't get enough of it. But actually in Codi's situation, his need was not being met because he was getting too much. So it's possible to overdo that in the needs. And this is basically how we helped Codi, and that basically all just fixed itself. Again, he didn't need to relieve that tension anymore because it didn't build up in the first place, and he was able to relax at different times of the day, and that mouthing just kind of just disappeared by itself. Unlike Lola though, Codi benefited from the introduction of a crate. Codi wasn't a dog that was susceptible to frustration, although him and Lola were very similar in that they were getting overstimulated. Lola was getting overstimulated because she was getting frustrated. Codi's getting overstimulated because he's become addicted to these kind of toys. So for them, part of their plan was very similar, but neither of these dogs needed to be ignored. They both reduced their mouthing without too much additional management. Once we'd solved all the problems, it solved itself, which was great. So would normal advice have helped these dogs? So for Teddy, it partly would have, because ignoring him would have created that boredom we needed. But if we hadn't have addressed the rest of the stuff, that probably just would have worn off in time, because the rest of the stuff is what we really needed to build a nice underlying sort of foundation in order that he could change his own behaviour. In none of these cases really ignoring was necessary. He needed more time to play with his friends. The most important thing was that Lola and Codi were both mouthing due to pressure building up. The crate helped Codi, but it made things worse for Lola. So we can see that there's three very different solutions for these three dogs. But the problem on the outset, if you weren't really looking into it too deeply, might have looked exactly the same. So really important to see that there's lots of different ways to solve this problem, but the most important thing to figure out is what is the underlying need that has not been fulfilled, and what are they trying to achieve with their behaviour. Once you've figured out those, then that will guide you towards a solution that is right for that specific situation. So hopefully that's been helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now. Bye bye.